I'm interested by this because at the moment, North Koreans are disputing the account of the United States. But if President Trump is correct, was he right to walk away? Did he do the right thing, or was it a missed opportunity?
No, I think he did the right thing. We have to remember that not only was President Trump watching what was taking place in the hearings yesterday, I believe the North Koreans are watching it with equal interest to see if the president was weakened at home, which would give them an advantage that he would make a deal on their terms rather than ours. So I think he did exactly the right thing. The only question I would have is whether or not his own staff and his national security team had the understanding that the North Koreans were going to, in fact, make some sort of a significant deal. And then the North Koreans walked away from that. So I think they have to take care. The president needs to take care not to give too much credibility to the North Korean dictator as such by using the office of the president to validate him now on 2 occasions. I think that is something to be avoided in the future, that unless they're going to really make some significant steps toward denuclearization, then they should not, the president should not make another trip and hold back and let's see where things go.
Right, not reward them necessarily. Mr. Secretary, what exactly was accomplished then on this trip, in this second meeting between President Trump and, of course, Kim Jong-un? I ask that because we need to figure that out before we can determine what happens next, whether there's any momentum to build off of.
Well, the fact that they're talking is always a good thing. The fact that they're not making any progress is not so good. Now, Secretary Pompeo has said things are happening behind the scenes. Hopefully that'll be the case. I had problems the first time when the president agreed to meet with Kim Jong-un without having a understanding of what the terms were. What did the North Koreans believe about denuclearization? What do we expect out of it? Really going through all of the parts to an agreement in advance before the 2 big leaders, as such, of the countries shake hands and say we've got a deal. So I was opposed to the meeting in the first instance, but I think now the second time around, I think the president's got to be more careful. Again, talking is better than shouting or threatening war. And the thing we have to be concerned about now is whether or not it's not just North Korea. The president's also negotiating with China.
Yes.
Does he have an incentive to work a deal with China now on terms that are favorable to China? We know that India and Pakistan are on the front burner as well. So North Korea is important, and it's important that the president step back a bit and say, okay, I've got other issues to deal with as well. Let's see if the North Koreans understand they're not going to get economic bump on this thing. It's actually going to hurt them. And so I think that it was the right thing to do. I think it lays a foundation. The president's saying, next time we'll either make a deal or I won't be there.
Right. One thing both sides do understand, of course, Caroline, is stagecraft and the importance of that.
And stagecraft is still being set to the tune at the moment, because we're wondering at the moment, Mr. Secretary, about the China-U.S. trade relation. You just mentioned it right there, and there's still anticipation that we'll be getting some sort of document in the next week or so, and a meeting between Xi and Trump. What sort of deal would look good in your eyes, and who do you think is going to win out here? There seems to be building tension between the hawks, well, notably Lighthizer on one side, and now it seems to be Mnuchin, Trump, Kudlow on the other.
Well, as you mentioned before, what happened to the stock market in South Korea? The same thing is happening now. There are expectations, which may not be fulfilled, but there are expectations that a deal is going to be made. The question I would have, is it going to be transactional, or is it really going to deal with the issues at the heart of this relationship with China? I think the president deserves credit for calling China out. You haven't been playing according to the rules, and we're not going to accept it any longer. The question now is, will he really do what is necessary to deal with the issue of transfer of intellectual property, stealing, in terms of partnerships that have to turn over their information in China, et cetera. Going at those would be a really significant deal. But I suspect he's going to want to make an agreement in order to not lose more in the stock market. I think the stock market, I think Wall Street has already baked in an expectation that something is going to be done. So if something is not done, I think we'll see the same thing that's happened in the South Korean market take place here.
Yeah, get at the root of the structural issues, as Ambassador Lighthizer has put it. Mr. Secretary, you had mentioned India and Pakistan. I want to get your thoughts there. They're facing off clearly. From where you sit, how real is the danger, and what does it mean for the United States?
Well, it's a very serious danger. I was in the Pentagon back in 1999, and when the two countries came close to going to war. The danger is that if they go to war, is there any way of controlling the escalation of the war, to the point where there's actually a nuclear exchange? And so the world has something at stake here. You'll have millions of people who could die as a result of this. So the United States has a lot at stake in terms of making sure that we use whatever diplomatic weight and leverage we have to try and bring these two countries away from the brink of war, and to see if we can't be really an arbiter here in some of the issues that remain.